Warning, 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 crafting in progress here. I am in such a creative mood. I'm feeling crafty today. It's time to create. Let's get crafty. Maker's gonna make. It's a Fallabulous extravaganza. Hello friends, welcome back. It is so good to see all of y'all. I hope you're enjoying the last days of summer. It doesn't feel even remotely close like fall here. We're still having really warm temperatures, but I don't mind it so much because I'm just pretending like it's fall outside, but I can assure you it's definitely fall going on inside. I have got fall crafts galore. We're gonna have so much fun this fall series. Today we're gonna be doing some really cute sewing projects that I think y'all are really gonna love. So let's go craft, y'all. I am ready. To kick things off, we're gonna start by sewing up some really cute pears. I always think about pears in the fall, and I'm not even sure why, but we're gonna go with it, and it's just something a little different than the ordinary pumpkins. So to get started, you're going to need this pattern, which I will provide for y'all as a free printable, and you can find the link for that in the description box. You're also going to need some fabrics of your choosing, and for each size, you're going to need to cut 3 pieces. Now I had cut 4, and I think it's because I cut everything on the fold. You don't need 4, you only need 3. So all we're going to do, this is a very simple pattern, so all you need to do is start by taking one of your pieces or 2 of your pieces. We're going to sew them together, right sides together, and you're going to sew from the middle of the top of your pear to the middle of the bottom of your pear. I'm just going to take this to the sewing machine and sew all the way around using an 1/8 inch seam allowance and a simple straight stitch. After getting the first 2 pieces sewn together, I am going to come in with my pinking shears and trim off this excess fabric. This is just going to help eliminate some of the bulk when we go to flip these right side out. And because there are so many curves to this, it kind of helps keep the shape when we flip it right side out. When you're cutting, cleaning up your edges with pinking shears, just be careful not to cut into any of your stitching. I have made that mistake, and you don't want to do that. It'll just undo everything. Everything will come unraveled. Okay, so now we're just going to take that 3rd piece and we're going to close up our pear by sewing the 3rd piece right sides together to both edges of our open pear. However, you do want to leave a small opening on this one at the bottom so that we can turn this right sides out and stuff it. So again, I'm just going to take this to the sewing machine, an 1/8 inch seam allowance all the way around, remembering to leave a small opening at the bottom on this piece so that we can flip it right sides out and stuff it in a few minutes. Your sewing is finished, and now we get to do my favorite part, flip it right sides out and see what we did, or how we did. Not what we did, but how we did. Okay, so now be mindful of the fact that once you flip this, it's going to look really funny because we are making somewhat of a 3D pear here, and it's gonna look pretty funny when you first flip it right side out. However, don't give up on the process, because once we get this stuffed, I promise you it's all gonna come together and look somewhat pear-like. I just thought it would be fun to add that 3rd piece because it does give our pear a little more dimension. It helps it to stand up better, to stand on its own better, and it's not flat. You know how when you just do the two pear shapes together, you kind of just get a flat. Even when you stuff it, it looks flat. And I really didn't want that. So that was my reasoning for choosing the 3 pieces. So here I have all 3 sizes sewn together. I've got them all cinched up. I've got them stuffed, and they're really cute. I like the 2 small ones the best, I think. They're really, really cute. I don't know what it is about small things, but I kind of like them. So now we're just going to add some embellishments to these. So for embellishments, I'm just going to have fun here. I'm going to use what I have on hand. I'm going to add a few leaves to these. Now I know that a pear does not have an oak leaf in nature, in real life, but this isn't real life. This is our craft life, and we get to take all kinds of creative liberties here. So I say just have fun, enjoy this process, and add whatever embellishments you want to this. So I'm adding a leaf. I'm going to add some acorns. I'm going to add a few of these hops to it. I did use some of these cute little craft sticks that I have. I found these, I think I got these at Hobby Lobby on Amazon, but I'll try to find some very similar and have them linked for y'all. So I'm just going to embellish away to all 3 little pears, and I'm going to have fun doing it, and that will finish off this project. Stay cute. Okay, y'all, so for this project, we are gonna create these darling little mushrooms. I'm gonna show you how I made these. I had so much fun creating and designing this pattern for y'all, so I can hardly wait to show y'all how to make these little cuties. So for the supplies, you're going to need this pattern, which I will have provided for y'all as a free download. And again, you can find that in the description box. You're going to need a strip of fabric that is 36 inches long by 3 inches wide for the mushroom gills. For the mushroom cap, you're just going to need 1 piece of fabric of your choosing. And then I did iron on some interfacing to this just to give it a little extra stiffness, because I'm just using some homespun fabric and it is pretty thin. And then you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric for the mushroom stem. So the first thing we're going to do is trace our mushroom stem pattern right onto our fabric. You do need 2 pieces of fabric for this. So I have them sandwiched or paired together, and then I'm just drawing the mushroom stem right onto my fabric. There's a reason I'm doing it this way, and we will get to that in just a few minutes, but I'm going to set this aside for now, and we're going to go focus on the mushroom cap and the mushroom gills. So for the cap, you notice we've got this little V cut out of it. That is important because it's what gives us a little bit of that peak at the top. So you get kind of so that the cap sort of umbrellas, if that makes sense. So the first thing we need to do is fold this right sides together, and then we're going to sew from the very top of this mushroom cap to that center peak, right where my thumb is at. It's really important that you don't sew past that, or you'll kind of mess up the umbrella effect. And then back to the mushroom stem, we're going to just sew right around our drawing. We're not going to cut this out just yet, and there's a reason for that. I'll explain that in a few minutes. We're just going to sew around the drawing. Then for the mushroom gills, we are going to do a gather stitch on this, and I am going to use my machine to do this gather stitch, so I just set it at the longest length stitch that I could possibly set it at on my sewing machine. However, you don't have to do this step. You can gather this by hand if you so choose. So here I am sewing the mushroom cap, and again, you want to make sure you just sew to that very center point. On the stem, this is my reasoning for not cutting this out and sewing around the drawing first. First of all, because this is a smaller piece, sometimes small pieces like this can be hard to turn. This just helps us prevent shrinking the pattern too much, because if you cut the stem out first and then sew it, you're actually shrinking it down quite a bit, because there's going to be a seam allowance. So by doing it this way, the pattern actually stays its original size. So I am careful to sew around this. There's a lot of curves on this, so I just stop my sewing machine, pivot my foot as I get to those corners, and just sew all the way around. I did forget to mention that it's also very important to leave the top of your mushroom stem open. Don't sew that closed because we're going to need that to be open so we can turn it. So everything has been sewn, and this is what everything should look like. Our mushroom cap should have that really stiff little peak at the top, and our mushroom stem is all ready. So to cut this out, I'm just going to use my pinking shears because this does eliminate bulk when we go to flip it. Now be very, very careful not to sew into any of your stitching, or it's going to come unraveled. You've heard me say it before. Okay, so now we've got that cut out. We're going to go ahead and flip this right side out, and y'all see how much easier it is to flip this because we didn't shrink the pattern by pre-cutting it out first. I love this little hack. I love this little trick, and you can actually apply this little trick to a lot of things that are small like that. Next, we're going to go ahead and gather the gills. We're going to go ahead and get all the gathering done here. So if you use your sewing machine to create the gather stitch, to pull and gather, you want to use the bottom stitch, the bobbin stitch or string, and make sure that you leave your strings really long to do this as well. If they're too short, you're going to have all kinds of issues on your hand. And then you just simply pull and gather, pull and gather, pull and gather. And so when I was doing this, I kind of had a tendency to pull and then push my gathering down and then pull and push my gathering down, as you can kind of see that I've done here. So this is going to be a little bit too small when you first gather everything, but that is okay because we want to be able to form this to our mushroom cap without pulling too many of the gathers out, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense to y'all. So now we're going to go ahead and attach the gills to the cap. And to do this, I am going to flip because we have open ends here. So I'm going to flip the end of this on top. You don't want to put it underneath or it'll show on the when we flip everything right side out. So fold it over to the top, and then I start on that seam allowance where we sewed the mushroom cap together, and I'm just going to pin this all the way around. Now you know that it's going to be a little smaller than the mushroom cap, so as we go around pinning, you are going to have to let some of those gathers out. When you get to the end, you actually want to have a little fabric left over because we want to overlap this with our beginning, because remember this has open ends. So you're going to overlap that last side to where we started. I hope that made sense. You could kind of see what I did there, but by overlapping them, it's going to hide the fact that that wasn't sewn together. I actually, when I created this pattern, I tried to sew them together and it made it a lot more difficult. So that's why I chose to leave them open. But once we sew the gills to the mushroom cap, you don't even see that. It completely disappears. So now we're at the sewing machine, and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around this, sewing the gills to the cap. Okay, so we are making some progress here. I've now sewn the gills to the cap, and something else I forgot to mention is when you attach these two together, make sure that you are sewing on the left side of your gather stitch. Otherwise, when we go to flip this right side out, that gather stitch is going to show. I made that mistake on the very first mushroom I made, so you can see a little bit of that gather stitching. So if you sew to the left of that when you attach these, it will hide that gather stitching. So now we're going to go ahead and do some hand gathering here. So because we need to close up the gills around our mushroom cap. So to do this, I am just using some crochet thread, and I'm just going to hand gather this by just simply going in and out, in and out. Something that is important here though is when you do start your gather stitch, those two open ends that we overlapped, make sure you connect them together with the knot. Like when you when you tie your knot at the end of your gather string, connect those two together at that point, or start your gathering at that point so those two are connected together. When you get to the end, pull your two strings out. You definitely want to have two strings hanging out so that we can get a good tight knot in this. So before I flip this right side out, I do kind of tighten it just a little bit and then flip it right side out, and we'll tighten it again. I know that seems redundant, but there is a reason I did that. It's because it kind of helps keep the shape. So we'll tighten it again, and then at this point you do kind of have to pull and kind of fluff and just play around with this a little bit to get that perfect shape back to the cap. I am going to put a little bit of stuffing inside the mushroom cap, but you don't want to overstuff this. You do kind of want to just have enough stuffing in there to help it keep its shape, but you don't want it overstuffed or it will lose that really cute mushroom effect. Then we'll go ahead and stuff the stem, and it's the opposite for the stem. I do stuff this really, really full. After getting the stem stuffed, I'm going to go ahead and just stitch that closed, and I do stitch it closed with a gather stitch because I want the top of this to be semi-rounded. So I just gather it all together, pull it tight, and then do a couple of knots so it doesn't come undone. There are a couple of different ways you can attach your stem to the mushroom cap. You can either sew it on or you can hot glue. I've chosen to hot glue because it's quick, it's easy, it's fast, and it's done just like that. So to attach the stem to the mushroom, I do leave my mushroom open just a little tiny bit, hot glue the stem into the mushroom cap, and then tie that cap around the stem. And this just gives it more of that, realistic mushroom look. I do tie that really, really tight and then just snip off our tail ends of the string. And y'all, these are so cute. I love how these look. You might have to do a little bit of fluffing at this point, but doesn't it just look so cute? I think the gather stitch really brings this together and gives just that super cute gill effect underneath our mushroom cap. So I really love how these are turning out. I'm so excited about these. I can't say it enough. I think they're super, super cute. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little fluffing to this, and then to finish these off, I am going to take my distressing ink pad here and my little dauber, and then I'm just going to ink up the stems a little bit just to kind of dirty them up, I guess, and make them look like we had just plucked these fresh out of the ground. I do think this inking step is it's an optional step. It just adds a little something to this, and I did go around the gills a little bit as well. And so here's just a little comparison of one that has been inked and one that has not, and they are both equally as cute. Okay, y'all, so I did have to incorporate a little bit of pumpkin into our crafty day here. I just couldn't not, right? I know pumpkins are a little overdone and we're probably all kind of tired of them, but we're going to create something really cute here with our pumpkins that is a little twist to just the ordinary boring old pumpkin. So the first thing I need to do is cut out some circles, and I'm using my little circle ruler to do this. This is a wonderful little tool. I'll have it linked in our supply list for y'all. So to do this, you do want to start your circle, your half circle on the fold so that when you open it up, it does become a full circle. And we are going to need to cut out 6 of these, and I'm just using some of this really pretty orange fabric, but of course you use the fabric of your choosing to do this step. Alrighty, so I have all 6 of my circles cut out, and now we're going to gather these all up and turn these flat little circles into fluffy little pumpkins. I know y'all have seen me do this, and you've seen a lot of people do this, so I won't dwell on this part too much, but for those of you who have never done this before, all you're going to do is a gather stitch all the way across the top edge of your circle here, just by going in and out, in and out. You do want to make sure you have a good knot at the end of your string so that you don't accidentally pull it all the way through. And when I am gathering, I do try to keep this as close to the top of as I possibly can. I come down about 1/8 of an inch because you don't want to lose too much of the size of your pumpkin. And we just gather it all the way around, and then I do leave my tail ends pretty long to do this, so I have lots of string to tie my pumpkin closed with. And then we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of stuffing into this. Again, on these ones, I don't overstuff. I just put enough in there to help keep that round shape. And then I'm going to go ahead and cinch that up tight, close it really tight. You can close it all the way. I am going to add some stems to these. But here I decided I needed just a little bit more stuffing because it wasn't quite full enough. So, just you be your own judge of that. So again, anyway, I'm going to stuff it, close it up really tight, and then we'll add some stems to these later. To add the pumpkin sections to our little pumpkin here, after it's been all cinched and closed up, we're going to come in from the bottom where we cinched it. We're going to string some, I'm using crochet thread here, and you're going to string it through your needle, insert your needle through the bottom and come up through the top of your pumpkin, and then wrap it all the way around and go back through, pull it through. I went off camera a little bit there, and I'm so sorry about that. But anyway, you pull it through, and then you just keep doing this. So then we'll go the opposite direction. So we're going to put the needle through the bottom, come out through the top there where our original top came through, pull it through, and go the opposite direction. And now we should have 4 sections. And then you just want to push it back through. You want to do this step every single time, so that you have 4 sections. Once you get those 4 sections, it's easy to go ahead and just keep sectioning this off, and you can choose how many sections you want. I think I did this step 4 times so that I got, what would that be, like 8 sections, I think, in the pumpkin, because it just gives it a little bit more pumpkin-y shape and makes it look a little bit more fluffy and full. Once you have all of your sections done, you do want to tie a couple of knots in this just to cinch it in really secure and make sure that nothing comes unraveled. So to do this, I just inserted my needle, made a little loop, put your needle through the loop, and that'll make another loop, and then I put my needle through that loop again, and that just gives us a really good secure knot. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I have made 6 of these cute little pumpkins, and now we're going to go ahead and put them in a muffin tin. Now I did take this muffin tin out and I spray painted it with some metallic copper spray paint. You can choose to do, paint your muffin tin however you want. We are going to do some more embellishing to this muffin tin in a little bit, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I've arranged my pumpkins to where I thought they looked really good in the tin. Then we'll go ahead and add some stems, and I'm using cinnamon sticks that I cut in half for the stems on these. You can use whatever you want for your stems, and then I'm going to hot glue the little pumpkin right into the muffin tin. You do want to make sure that when you're doing this, you get the bottom side where we did all the cinching. That goes down into the muffin tin, so you get the pretty side facing up. And I'm just going to go ahead and repeat this all the way through for all 6 of our cute little pumpkins. Now I think these are darling exactly the way they are, but I just can't leave things well enough alone, and I think we need to add some embellishments to this. So I want to make the muffin tin, and I probably should have done this step before I put the pumpkins in. It really was, to be perfectly honest, kind of an afterthought, because after I got the pumpkins in, I thought, oh, this tin looks a little flat. So this step probably should be done first, but I'm going to come in with some of this gold paint that I have mixed with baking soda to make it pretty thick and give it a little bit of texture. And I'm just kind of blotching it all over the muffin tin. And I'm going to do this really quickly because while the paint is still wet, I want to sprinkle this thing with a very liberal coating of cinnamon. And the wet paint is going to act as the glue, which is going to hold all of our cinnamon into place. Now, the reason I chose to do that gold paint is to kind of make it look so that it blended in really well with the cinnamon and just kind of gave that cinnamon an extra pop and sort of enhanced the cinnamon color. So we're going to do this step really quick, let it dry thoroughly, and then we'll go ahead and start doing some embellishing. I love adding the cinnamon. I think it was a good touch. It also smells really, really, really good. So we're going to start embellishing these. And my first thought here, y'all, was that I want to add some, some of this little fun little moss to the tops of these pumpkins. And my first thought was to use Mod Podge to do this because sometimes hot glue shows and I didn't want to see any of that hot glue. The Mod Podge, though, did not work. The fabric just sucked it up and none of the moss stuck. So I had to revert to using hot glue anyway. So I use hot glue to attach the moss, and then I'm just going to add a couple of leaves in here. These are just some leaves that I pulled off of a pick, and then I kind of cut them down a little bit so that they were a little smaller to fit the pumpkin really well. So we'll add some leaves in. I'm going to do a little bit of moss to all 6 of our pumpkins, add in some leaves, and then of course we have to have some curlicues as well. So to make the curlicues, I just used some copper wire, wrapped it around a paintbrush so that I got these cute little curlicues like this, and then we'll go ahead and attach those to the pumpkins as well. To finish off the embellishments for these darling little pumpkin muffins, that's what we're going to call them, I'm going to make I made a cute little tag that just simply says pumpkin muffins. I'll have that available as a free printable for y'all if you want to copy the same one. Then I'm just going to add a cute jute bow to this, and then I also tied a fabric bow, so I will glue this whole ensemble to the fabric bow, and then come in and distress the edges of our tag just a little bit with my distress ink pad, and then we'll place it in the muffin tin. And I did have a little bit of a hard time deciding where I wanted to place this, so I kind of played around with it a little bit and landed right here on the placement of this, and this finishes this off. I think these are super, super cute. I'm very pleased with how well these turned out. Okay, can we just talk about these darling little mushrooms? I think these are so cute. When I first started working on the pattern for these, I was kind of like, I don't know about this, but now that I've got some made, y'all, I love these. I just think they are darling. Y'all are gonna have to let me know what you think of these little cuties. They are so fun. The pears also turned out really cute. I think my favorite is definitely the cute little small ones. I just love the little simplicity of them, and I feel like they definitely look a little more like a pear. I think these would be so darling tucked in a cute little basket or a wooden bowl somewhere for the fall season.
I love these ones. I'm definitely gonna be making some more. And the big one is kind of cute too. Honestly, I think if the big one was bigger, more like a real pillow size, it might be cuter. But I did decide to go ahead and crochet a fun oak leaf for this one, and I think that sort of helped a little. So again, let me know what y'all think of the cute little pears. Is this something you think you'll make? And then we have these. These just make me smile. This makes me really happy. I love how well this turned out. This was a lot of fun to make. It was probably my favorite to make. Well, I don't know. The mushrooms are pretty darn cute too. So of the two, I don't know if I can pick a favorite, but these are right up there for sure. I love how these little cuties turned out. So y'all will have to let me know, of the 3 projects we worked on today, did you have a favorite? Alrighty friends, well that is going to wrap up our Fallabulous crafty projects for this week. I had a ton of fun. It was so much fun creating all these little cuties. I can hardly wait to set them out and enjoy them for the fall season. I am really curious if y'all will make some of these projects. They're just, how could you not? Especially those cute little mushrooms. So I hope y'all do. I hope you were inspired, and I hope that I gave you some really good ideas. Next week, I've got more Fallabulous projects coming your way. So y'all be sure, come back and see me again next week. Until then, take care, know that I love y'all, and I'll see you soon. Bye.